All right, welcome into the Helping Healing. Wait a minute. Welcome into the good old-fashioned dislike, season 3. We're going to be kicking off and doing a little conference championship predictions for the weekend. And so we want to jump on and talk a little bit about championship weekend in college football. Of course, everybody's up in arms about the latest college football playoff ranking. It kind of blows my mind, just to be honest, that people are so enraged. We knew there were going to be some mediocre football teams that make the playoffs this year. Why we knew? I mean, there have been teams that were 9-3 that were ranked as high as number 9. And so the whole rage, the whole time about this playoff system, I knew we're going to let teams in that people are going to be upset. Just so happens the last 2 years, it's possibly the Alabama Crimson Tide. And so I'm not going to be upset about it either way, right? You could make it's not deserving. It's who the best are. But the panel of dislike has decided that we're going to come up with our predictions. Feel free to make your comments about who you think are going to win these conference championship games, your hot takes for the college football, the end of the college football season. We'd love to share them on the live stream where possible. And so you may be joining me out on the TikTok landscape, on YouTube or Facebook. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is these conference championships and the panel of dislike. And so right out the gate, we've got the USA Conference. That's going to be the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers taking on the Jacksonville State Jaguars. And thoughts on Ohio State losing to Michigan again, man. I was kind of blown away. I'm not completely shocked because it's rivalry weekend, man. But 10 points, like, you got to think that's kind of wild. 10 points from Ohio State, one of the most expensive rosters out there, and they don't get it done against their rival. And I think now I think you almost have to win the national championship, right? And I hate to even say that, but as an Alabama fan, I get it, right? It's national championship or bust. And especially to spend as much money as Ohio State did. But anything's possible, man. That ball's shaped weird, and it does weird things. But we got Conference USA, Western Kentucky. I am the only member of the panel that is going with the Hilltoppers over the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. I think I said Jaguars. Sorry, Gamecocks, the Alabama State here in the state of Alabama. Will, Ben, and Blake, Josh all take Jacksonville State. So that's the official pick, although I am picking the Hilltoppers. I think I'm just a little biased. I want to help Alabama's strength of schedule out. So what do you guys think about who's going to win that game? A lot of coughing going on around here. All right, Mountain West Conference. We have Boise State and Heisman Trophy candidate Genty taking on the UNLV Running Rebels of UNLV for the Mountain West Championship, and every panel member is going with Boise State here. So 4 out of 4 or 5 out of 5 rolling with the Boise State Broncos and the Blue Field of Doom. And that's one of the first ones that's going to impact that top 12. And so we're thinking Boise State wins. They're going to be in. Next, we have the American Athletic Conference with Tulane taking on Army. Salute the troops in the triple option there. And we've got most of the panel going with Tulane. That would be Will, myself, Ben, and Blake. Also, shout out to Will, who won our Pick'em last year going through March Madness. Still got to get him his jersey that he won. But most of the panel going with Tulane. That leaves Josh going with Army and the Tulane Green Wave, former SEC conference members, getting the dub in the American Athletic Conference. In the Big 12, right, we got Arizona State Sun Devils taking on Iowa State Cyclones. And I feel kind of like I'm not being loyal. The Cyclones have certainly helped the Crimson Tide out in the past. But most of the panel is going to roll with Arizona State Sun Devils, the up-and-coming Arizona State Sun Devils. Appreciate Fender over here on TikTok hitting us with the hearts on our TikTok live. But I'm going with, or actually we as a panel are going with Arizona State. But it is a 3-2 split. Will, Ben, and myself are taking Arizona State. and Iowa State. Blake and Josh are going to take Arizona State or Iowa State, but the panel chooses Arizona State. There's our next team that gets into the playoffs and an automatic bye. Big 12 champions, Arizona State. That just sounds a little weird to say, to be honest. All right, next we got MACtion, the Mid-American Conference with Ohio Bobcats taking on Miami of Ohio Redhawks. And the panel is taking the Bobcats of Ohio to win the MAC. The panel all goes unanimously with Ohio. In the SEC, right? SEC country, we're rocking and rolling. Got Texas, the Longhorns taking on Georgia. It kind of hurts my feelings, I'm just going to be honest, to admit that I have picked Texas to win this whole conference in their first year. It just seems really bad to think that. But it's really hard to beat a team twice. And for some reason, the football universe, that's just almost unheard of to beat a team twice. And so I, along with Ben and Josh, are taking the Texas Longhorns to unfortunately win the conference championship in their first year in the conference. And that leaves Will and Blake taking the Georgia Bulldogs. And of course, Texas will be in along with Georgia. I don't think either one of these teams are going to be booted from the college football playoff. So Texas and Georgia will both be in despite the outcome of the conference championships, at least if they want to hang on the conference championships, because I can just see if that knocks at least an SEC school out, there won't be a conference championship in the near future. So Texas, the panel picks Texas. We are kind of split 3-2 with Will and Blake taking Georgia, but we take Texas, keeping that number 2 spot in the playoffs. The Sun Belt, Louisiana Raging Cajun, I'm just going to say I got a soft spot. They've been my team on NCAA football when it was Xbox. That was my build-a-team, create a dynasty. And so I love the Raging Cajuns. And the panel is going to follow suit. The whole panel goes with Louisiana to win the Sun Belt over We Are Marshall. So the Louisiana Raging Cajuns over the Marshall Thundering Herd. That is a panel decision unanimously. On to the Big Ten. The Big Ten. We believe that both of these teams will make the playoff regardless of what happens, despite many of them only having a 1-game regular season when we all think about it, honestly. But the Big Ten, Oregon versus Penn State, and the whole panel does not have any trust in James Franklin and the Nittany Lions to get it done. And so we're running with the Ducks to remain number 1 overall and win the Big Ten Conference. And we also think that Penn State will still be in the top 12. They're not going anywhere. But, man, just think, James Franklin has had a hard time getting it done, which means in this crazy football season, Penn State might actually get it done. And that would be crazy. Once again, it's not like it's going to knock anybody out of the playoff hunt if that is the case, and it does happen. So number next, we have the ACC, which is probably the biggest game, oddly enough, of the entire weekend, one of the deal breakers of the entire weekend, or as many people believe, right? Go ahead and let me know in the comments if you think Bama's in either way. Is Bama in the playoff regardless of who wins the ACC? Is Bama in, or do they have to have SMU win this thing? Personally, I'm here for the chaos. I'm here for people being upset. Triple J227 from YouTube says Penn State might win. They're playing in Indy, might be a determining factor. Yeah, I mean, location's going to be a big deal. I know at least in the playoff system, when we get to the playoffs, Triple J, location's going to be a big deal. Why could it not be a factor here, right? The least one thing I figured out in this whole like college football thing is when you least expect something to happen is when it will happen, right? And so I haven't seen anybody picking James Franklin and the Nittany Lions to get it done. They're in the Big Ten. So That's kind of a hot take there, Triple J. I don't think it's as hot as many people think. Ben, my compadre panel member, he thinks that SMU must win for the Crimson Tide to stay in. And I'm going to say that I think that as well. I think, obviously SMU winning is the easiest path. That kind of cuts out the decision. If Clemson does win, they got that conference championship, which apparently there is a heavy, and it should be, right? Your conference champs. I get it. But Ben thinks Bama needs a Southern Methodist win. How do you guys, anybody else there thinking about what might be the case there and what they need? But we get to Clemson and the Big Ten championship, or ACC Atlantic Coast Conference. I'm excited that, Cal and those guys didn't make it in, which is impressive, right? Since it's the Atlantic Coast Conference. You got to have someone from the Atlantic Coast. And so Clemson representing there, but then you got Southern Methodist from Texas, which kind of blows up the whole thing. Unfortunately, I don't think that Southern Methodist has played anybody that's going to prepare them to beat a Clemson. They've not beaten a team at Clemson's level. I say that because my understanding is they got beat by BYU, right? And I think Clemson has more dudes than BYU does. And so my personal pick is going to be the Clemson Tigers, and Dabo gets a chance to hurt his former school again, because he's made a habit of doing that, by the way, and hurts my feelings every time. But I'm picking Clemson to win. I'm joined by Blake and Josh from the panel, so that means the official pick is Clemson, and you have Will and Ben going with SMU to win that game. Of course, that means Will and Ben think that the Crimson Tide will be in. And I have created two scenarios, two rankings that would slide the Tide in, or in case Clemson wins. But if SMU pulls off the win, and I think it's an upset, then I've got Alabama sticking at the 11 spot and being jumped by Arizona State and Clemson. So let me update this real quick, and I'll give you what I'm thinking with the picks that we have made, official picks from the panel, with Alabama getting in either scenario, because I know that's what everybody wants to talk about, because everybody loves seeing Alabama get in. Man, heads are exploding. These talking heads on TV crack me up, because they're the ones who lead the charge for an expanded playoff. And then they're the very same ones who rage against the machine when Alabama gets in. So the joke's on them there. All right. Let's see. See what we get here. So if this is how it falls, if Alabama gets in, right? If Alabama gets in and Clemson wins the conference, yes, Ben, it's all about hope. You got to have hope, right? Everybody's got to have hope. And so here's the scenario. If SMU loses and Clemson jumps in, I think people think that like they won't rank these conference champions. I think they're going to put the conference champions in the mix, right? But we don't necessarily know how they're going to put them in the mix. And I think that's what leaves it in. But I tend to agree with Ben. I think that SMU wins the Tide is in, Clemson wins, and the Tide's going to get bumped out. Even though SMU's record really doesn't back it up. But, the one thing about it is the two things that are conflicting is, Miami's not in, but both SMU and Clemson made the conference championship. And I think they've said that they're not going to punish somebody for losing the conference championship, unless, of course, it's a fourth loss by Clemson. And maybe they were just talking about the SEC. We can keep hope. But the official picks of the panel is going to leave the Crimson Tide out by one vote. And so we'll see those matchups eventually. We certainly appreciate everybody's comments, appreciate the whole season here. We'll be back soon, I'm sure, to talk a little bit about bowl season and the playoff matchups. Hope you all have a good night, and we'll talk at you later.